Greetings and welcome to another video, in which I want to give you my full feedback on the Endwalker Relics. Yes, this topic has been around in our community for the last couple of weeks, visually and mentally. But I guess I want to give you my personal opinion before calling this expansion a day and going into the next. Are Endwalker Relics a letdown compared to the ones from other expansions? Overall, I would say yes, because from the playstyle aspect, while not all players hated the simple Tomestone grind and Manderville fun, the majority was a bit disappointed that we didn't get any new exploration zone or something special that makes the grind for the relic weapon unique. Even the A REALM REBORN and Heavensward, Zodiac and Anima series featured more variety and the obligatory light farm steps, fate grinds, books, or just something that the player felt to do just for the relic weapon. I don't particularly hate the freedom of the Manderville weapon to earn tomestones in whatever way we want, but it always just felt like the usual and ordinary grind for gear that every patch brings with. Like I would farm my tomestone weapons and gear without weekly limitations and basically no real item value, except for the last step maybe. Because every step before had been worse than the alternative gear, like the before mentioned tomestone weapons, savage weapons, or even extreme trial arms sometimes. That combined with the second stage that I really hated. Because even though there are some exceptions, I agree with other streamers, the particle effects were insanely low quality, and some of these weapons actually looked more outdated and bad than some of the A REALM REBORN or Heavensward stages that have been introduced 8 to 10 years ago. There had been some cool design ideas and I didn't have any issue with the flipped class color design, especially the Monk Fist or Paladin Sword and Shield looked kinda nice. But overall the second stage was truly a letdown in my opinion. The funniest thing though, nearly each major relic patch in Shadowbringers or before brought in a whole new stage of content with 2 relic weapons at their finals plus armor sets in Shadowbringers and Stormblood. So not only did we get a smaller total number of different relic stages, but also no armor pieces at all. To be fair to Square, they really nailed the armor sets on Tomestone, Pandemonium and PvP gear this time around. And also the gap caused by one missing mat stage had been filled with the PvP ranked rewards this time, which had never seen such a high quality weapon design ever before. Nonetheless, my biggest issue with the Manderville relic design and SE's approach to the whole process of getting it simply shows nothing more than a bad excuse to not offer any exploratory zones or content of that sort. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Endwalker was a horrible expansion, far from it. But Square definitely did cut some corners and anyone denying that is just on a big wave of copium. However, we always have to take into account that people will measure the quality and value of things by the standards that had been set before. That is why Endwalker seems a bit less amazing just because Shadowbringers delivered a true blockbuster of a game that shook the foundation of the MMO world. It's not only the WoW exodus why this game had been so massively successful and popular 2 years ago, but because the developer team simply pushed the boundaries of our beloved Final Fantasy XIV to the next level. And it comes from this level of expectation that makes Endwalker feel lacking in some aspects. Like Wesk Elba said in his documentary about Heavensward, if you compare Endwalker to Heavensward and A REALM REBORN, it is still by far the best expansion, at least from the content offered and playstyle wise. On the other hand, relics are definitely a main selling point these expansions offer, because at least from their design they are still unmatched by everything that came afterwards, even though Shadowbringers had some really good looking relic stages before the final one. So I guess it all depends on personal emotions and attachment to these values and qualities. I for myself always loved to have Bozja and Zadnor as content option for when I was bored in Shadowbringers. On the other hand, many players didn't like these forms of content, never reached any significant stage to earn their breathtaking relic for themselves. Which means spreading the availability for a wider range of the player base is actually a logical step to do, right? Hardcore gamers wanting to wear special gear will still have their ultimate weapon, that we got 2 of in this expansion, and I have to admit, the second one looked amazing. Still one of the biggest eye-catchers this game has to offer. And while I reached this conclusion right after the big discussion about tedious or not tedious relics, Square released the third stage in the form of the majestic Manderville weapons. Holy Hildebrand, those might not look like relics, but they look amazing, and except for 1 or 2 of them, the whole line looks badass. And I believe that the community widely agreed at that time of the majestic weapons release, but the crazy thing about this one, it should have been the final stage in my opinion, because expectations. Yes, the final stage being looked at in a vacuum aren't bad weapons at all. The unique weapon draw effect, the stylish energy rings around the front, the cool shielded power field, it's definitely a sight to behold. But the big problem on those is A, the previous stage looked cooler and cleaner in my opinion, and B, the biggest problem, this is a high preference design with limited capacities of glamour combinations. While the demonic green of majestic weapons can bite into the fit with certain glams, the space and mecha style Manderville versions only have some glams to actually fit with, or many players told me that they made up a glamour set just for the weapon alone. Which is a perfect example of having a design at hand that will split the community in camps of really liking or hating it, especially with the expectations they had from the majestic stage. That combined with a highly controversial way of receiving them is a red line leading through the whole expansion. I think Endwalker did one thing more than any other expansion before. It reached the player base on far ends of their interest spectrum. And it never did that with consistency. Top was way too hard at the beginning, while other forms of content were much too easy and repetitive. And this is just one example. And the relics follow on the same path, which is neither good or bad, but personal preference. I mean, we all hated the book step in A Realm Reborn, but loved the relics we received afterwards. We all hated to sit and wait for notorious monsters to appear in Eureka, but we all loved sharing our memories of that time and were insanely happy when we could finally see the light at the end of the aisle. Manderville and Endwalker in general just had a totally different effect. It tipped the scale in different directions many times, and while Endwalker seemed to homogenize everything, below that surface Square just tried to make every single player happy. Sure, they might have cut some corners too and didn't work as hard as in Shadowbringers, but I feel the intention always had been focusing on pleasing every player to have a truly enjoyable experience with the game. So while the relics might not click with lots of players that worked hard for old relic weapons, their expectations are not getting reaffirmed and they can't match the standards of the former relic experience. Still, I would bet my whole guild pool that no other relic weapon was able to inspire so many new relic hunters than the one from this expansion. I do favor basically every relic before, but I feel like sometimes you just have to look at things from a different perspective if you want the full picture. As we're living in a world of diversity, a general consensus might serve as an indication of truth. But we have to remember that the truth has different angles and it depends on where the person is looking at it. So even when we feel that the relics were lacking in this expansion, we might just stand at an angle where we cannot see those people that really enjoyed it. But regardless of any perspective, I still hope that Square will cook something amazing for Endwalker and bring Final Fantasy XIV to a whole new level. And if you really hated the Endwalker Relic, check out the many videos I made about the old ones, especially the upcoming ones. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy and keep loving Final Fantasy.